Okay. Okay, now you see, the reason we generate invoice is because we want to generate sales, we want to generate income. In other words, to say that if you are not generating sales, if you are not generating income, do you need to generate invoice or not? For example, let me quote you an example. Okay. For example, you go to Penang to attend your customer, to service your customer in Penang, right? And then all the traveling expenses, like your petrol, like your hotel, like your food, okay, you may claim from your customer. Your customer will pay you, okay? But for this payment, they haven't paid you yet. You need to make claim to them. Then only they make payment to you. So how you make claim to them? How you going to make claim? Invoice, right? You're going to invoice them, correct? But is this claim part of your sales or part of your income? You can treat it as your sales or you can treat it as your income or not? No. This is not your income. This is not your sales. So in that case, are you still able or allowed to issue invoice or not? Now realize or not? The invoice. In what sense that you need to issue invoice? Once you want to generate income or sales, then only you are allowed to do that. But for the claim is not your income. The claim is not your invoice. The claim is not your sales, not your income. So you are not allowed to issue e-invoice. Remember, Remember, this is not what I said. Okay, this is from the guideline. Okay, from the e-invoice rules. You cannot issue invoice to the person that you want to claim. But now our practice, every company is like that, right? Then how? If you cannot issue invoice, then how? Huh? No. This is not the self-bill. You are not payment. You want to collect payment. You are the recipient. So how are you going to do this transaction? If you cannot no longer allowed to do the invoices, then how are you going to do? Yeah? No. Okay. Let me show you this one, the claim. Okay, let us see from here. An individual under a contract of services employment may incur certain expenses on behalf of the employer. Okay, such expenses include but not limited to accommodation, toll, mileage, blah, blah, blah. Okay, currently, employees are required to submit their expenses claim to their employers by providing the authenticity of such expenses with supporting documents like bills, receipt, invoices, right? All these kind of things. Upon implementation of e-invoice, when a sales transaction is concluded, employees are required to request the e-invoice to be issued to their employer for proof of expenses. Okay? to the extent possible. However, RB acknowledged that there may be difficulty in getting the invoice to be issued in the name of employer. All right, for certain expenses. In this regard, IRB provide the following concession. Businesses will be allowed to proceed with the use of the invoice issued in the name of employee or existing supporting documentation to support the particular transaction as proof of expenses. Okay, and in the event where employees pay for expenses incurred overseas, both employer and employee are not required to issue a self-bill invoice. As such, IRB will accept the foreign bills receipt, blah, 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 okay, as this one. Note that this exception will only applicable if the employer is able to prove that the employee is acting, blah, blah, blah. Okay, this is not important. Now, you see from here, this is what I want to show you. Employees submit their submitting, okay. Now, you see. For expenses claim, employee, blah, blah, blah. All this one just repeat just now, the above mentioned. Okay. Not this one. Okay, another one. Just want to show you. Excuse me. Now you see from here, this one, supplier 2 provides payment proof to the buyer to recover the payment. Okay, now you see, this one, okay, it's here. Look at this one. Supplier 1 issue invoice to buyer. Okay, supplier 1 issue invoice direct to the buyer, but the payment is made by the supplier 2. Okay, get the point? Get it, So now, meaning that now, you want the supplier to wants to claim back this money from the buyer, correct? Yeah, yes, the buyer is the company. So the buyer, he or she is supposed to make payment to the supplier 1, but he's not, and you make the payment. Now you want to claim. Now you want to make claim. So currently, how we make claim? We issue invoice, right? To the buyer to claim back this money, right? Now our practice is like this. But can you do that again? That issue invoice to the buyer to claim. Now cannot already. You see, from here, you read carefully. Supplier 1 issue an invoice directly to buyer for the goods or services rendered to buyer. Subsequently, supplier 2 make payments to supplier 1. Okay? To settle the said e-invoice issue to buyer. Okay? It's the supplier 2 make payment to supplier 1. Okay? Not the buyer make payment. Okay? In accordance with the arrangement between supplier 2 and the buyer. Okay? Now, accordingly, supplier 2 will issue invoice to buyer, okay, for the goods sold or service rendered by the supplier 2, okay. As supplier 1 has issued an invoice to buyer, the same should not be included in the invoice issued by supplier 2 to buyer again anymore. Get the point or not? Double transaction, so you cannot issue the same. Understand? So you see, the step involved for the issuing of this one is supplier to enter into agreement with buyer for supply of goods or provision of services. As part of the agreement, supplier 2 will make payment. Supplier 2 will make payment on behalf of buyer to settle any expenses incurred. Okay? Now you see, upon concluding a sales or transaction, supplier 1 will issue an e-invoice directly to the buyer, okay, as per the required field, as blah, 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 blah. Okay, now the process of issuing is similar to the invoice workflow, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now look at here. Supplier 2 will make payment on behalf of buyer to supplier 1 to settle the outstanding. Okay, supplier 1 will issue payment proof to supplier 2 for the settlement. Remember this one, okay? Now, supplier 1 issue payment proof. What is the payment proof? Official receipt. Correct? So, the supplier 2 will collect the official receipt only, right, from the supplier 1. Now, you see, supplier 2 will issue to the buyer for goods rendered. Supplier 2, okay? Then, supplier 2 should neither include the payment made on behalf. You see that? Of buyer in supplier 2 invoice, nor issue an additional invoice for it. See that? Supplier 2 should not issue invoice to the buyer, include this payment on behalf. Cannot include already. No longer. Okay, no more. Or you want to create another additional e-invoice, see that? And it's not allowed. See that? So supplier 2 can do is what? Provide payment proof. Only can provide the official receipt from the supplier 1 to the buyer only. Okay. Then please tell me, in accounting concern, how are you going to keep this record? Now, this is not, I say, this is the e-invoice. So since you are not allowed to do that, then in accounting wise, how are you going to keep this transaction? Okay, so now you see, this theory, this knowledge, you must very clear before you do the transaction.
How about, let's say, example, mileage outstation. So, mileage we don't have receipt. Just based on how much mileage we run, then we claim back based on the...
Yeah.
So, in this scenario, we need to do self-bill?
No. As I said that now, you see, this scenario is between the employee and employer. But just now what I mentioned is not under the employment scenario. Environment is not between the employee and the employment. Now is the outsider. You want to claim from your customer or any third party. Okay? So how are you going to claim? Now you are not allowed to issue invoice already, you know. You are not allowed to do e-invoice. Now, look at this, e-invoice. You are not allowed to do additional e-invoice. But doesn't mean that you are not allowed to create invoice. You see that? For e-invoice, you cannot submit for e-invoice. But for your accounting terms, you have no choice. You must have invoice to keep record for this transaction, correct? You have to take in. Otherwise, how are you going to keep track all this? No way. So you still allowed to create invoice. But this invoice, please don't submit for e-invoice. So in other words, to say that you are going to have two types of invoices. One is e-invoice. One is claim invoice. The normal invoice. Understand or not? Now, from the audit point of view, we no need the transaction from the e-invoice. We no need 100%, or we no need, not necessary that the transaction must be e-invoice. That one is, you have to comply only. But in terms of, from the point of audit views, no need. Get the point? Now you see why I say that is because, you know, we are the expertise. We are the auditor. Okay? We know these things. That's why I can raise up for you. I can highlight to you. I can inform you. For other people, they are not in this area. They may not able to give you this information. They will follow this guideline. If they follow this guideline, then how are you going to solve your problem? Okay, so now you know already, right? So please keep in mind this one. Go and ask your people. Go and ask your friend. How are you going to do this? I say. Then you can show off already. Then you can show off already. Nobody know. When you ask them this one, then how? Now I want to claim. How am I going to make claim? I'm not allowed to do this. Get the point or not? In other words, to say that you are still allowed to do the invoice, but it's a normal invoice, not the e-invoice. Don't submit for invoice. E-invoice is strictly for the sales and the proof of your income only. For those transactions, those invoices, not for the sales, not for the income, don't submit for the e-invoice. That's why the reason why I ask you the purpose of the e-invoice and the purpose of the invoice. So this one is, most of the people, they don't understand why you want to issue invoice. Issue invoice for what purpose? Okay, because I'm happy. Okay. Yeah, very good question. Now you see, debit note got two types of debit note. Credit note got two types of credit note. Get a point? You have to separate out. One is e-invoice credit note, e-invoice debit note. One is normal credit note, normal debit note. That one is not submit for the invoice one. Okay? So you are going to have two types of running number. Please don't use the same running number. This one is very important. Don't use the same running number. Okay? Otherwise, RB will come to you, tax department will come to you, audit department will come to you. Why? How come that this one, this running number miss out one? You didn't submit. Okay? Don't separate. Okay. Now, since we already understand the reason why we want to issue the invoice already, okay? So, now, I direct issue invoice for you to see. Okay, assuming that now you already complete all the customer requirements. Okay, you already collect all the information from your customer. Okay, now I just simply select this customer. Okay, then item. I just simply select one item. Okay, and then this is the price. Okay, now you see the tariff code. This is a must tariff code. Every transaction, every item, you must have a tariff code. And beside the tariff code, do you see this one, the classification? Okay, this one is a compulsory. You must have. Now you see, now I don't want to call out this classification code for this transaction. I just want to show you whether you are able to submit or not without the classification code. Okay, so now you see, this one, assuming that this is your tax. You see, the tax code. Of course, this setting is, as I told you, is from my programmer. They just simply set only. All right. So the tax code is from the LHDN. The RLB is compulsory. You must have. Okay. Why put 06? Because they follow the tax code. 01 is for the sales tax. 02 is for the service tax. 03 is for this one. Okay. All this is compulsory. Must have. Okay. Now we apply is 06. Okay. Not applicable. Since the tax is not applicable, means that you don't need the tax code already. But once you remove this one gone already. So you have to call it back again. Okay, excuse me. Now you see, I don't want to call, I don't want to insert the classification code yet. Okay, so I just direct add to the screen. Okay, now we come to here. You can see it now. This is our invoice number. Our invoice number is 871. Okay, it's 871. Today's date. Okay, today's time. Okay, now the current time. Okay, this is the company. The company is you. If you are the Denka, this is your Denka TIN number. Okay, so your Denka MSIC code. Okay, and this is the company SSD, the Denka company SSD, and this is the customer SSD. If the customer do have the SSD, it will show out here. Okay, GST, we forget it. Then now this is bill to. Invoice to who? Invoice to this customer, correct? But the recipient, this part delivery to, this is the recipient. It can be the same, right? It can be not the same. Still remember the recipient? So this part, carefully, be careful. Okay, now just now I say that most of the people, they don't want to so hate it. They just follow. You bill to who, and then who receive. Just make it simple. Make it easy. Okay? But you have to be ready lah. If anything, checking or investigation from them, then it might incur a big issue for this. Make sure this one the recipient. Okay, now you see, I do nothing on this part, right? I just show you only. Remember, the invoice number is 871. Okay, I just call out like this only. Then I just click add new. Now here, we got 3 buttons. Now, later, and no. So what is the difference? If you click on now, means that immediately submit for e-invoice already. The real one, the real time submission. If you click later, then it will hold in your list. The purpose is what? Because you may do consolidated later. You don't want to submit for invoice. You just create, but you're going to do consolidated. But for your case, no way. Okay, so you're not going to apply this later. You will choose this one. Immediate submit for invoice. And what is the last one? No. No is for, just now we mentioned, for that normal invoice. Not for the e-invoice. You want to create normal invoice. Still remember? You want to make claim, issue the claim invoice. Then you have to click this no. No means that you're not going to submit for the invoice. Understand or not? You see how good we are? We have 3 buttons until people confused. Even I myself sometimes also confused. Hey, why I click this button? And this one who asked me one, you send me the, So now you know about it. Now very clear already, right? Okay. I repeat again. I repeat. No is for normal invoice, not submit for e-invoice one. Yes, now is immediate submit for e-invoice. Later is for consolidated. But for your case, forget about later. Okay? Now and no only. Understand? Okay. Now I click now. See that? What does that mean? Missing classification code in item detail. In order to say that anything's missing, you will not able to submit. Okay? Our system will do checking, capture for you. So in order to say that, you have to come in here, you have to choose. Okay? Normally we'll choose this one. Okay? Others. Then we add, then we click add new. We click now. Okay, are you sure you want to add this new record? Yes. Now, when I click OK, please help me to count by second. 1, 2, 3. Okay, see how long you will get the return from the IRB My Invoice portal. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Oi, quite fast. Not bad. Successful. Now, previously, when I click OK, I have to count until 1 minute, 60 seconds. But now, today is quite fast. 1, 2, 3. Then come out already. So you can see this one is successful already, right? So document is this one. Now, can you see the UID and UUID? So what is the UUID means? Forget about the UID. You look at the UUID. The first U, I also don't know. Okay, maybe it stands for unknown. Okay, the second U is unique. I stands for identifier. D is documents. Unique identifier document. Now this is the invoice number of IRB for this transaction. Just now your invoice number is what? This one, right? This is your internal invoice number, but this is the IRB invoice number. Okay, they will create the invoice number for you for this transaction. In order to say that for whatever relevant documents in the future, you must provide this UUID to them. Okay, you don't tell them your invoice number. You have to tell them your UUID number. Then only they are able to trace. Understand or not? So this UUID number is a must. When you do submission, if you don't see this UID and UUID number, which means that your submission failed. Okay? Now, a lot of systems, they're not going to point out this. They're not going to highlight this for you. You may not know that, you already get this. Okay? And this is the real one. Immediately we get from the IRB. So when I click OK, then we can go further. But before that, let me share with you. Submission successful doesn't mean that this transaction is validated, is qualified, is approved. No. This is just only for submission only. You submit only. Okay? Without approval yet. Successfully submit. Okay? Then how are you going to make sure that this document, ensure that this document is successful or not? How do you know that whether this document, this transaction is successful or not? Then we have to go to the list. Okay, from the list here, this is the transaction, right? 871. Then you can drag to behind here. You see these two transactions, these two status, valid and valid. Now these two must be valid, then only consider valid. Either one not display valid means that this transaction is not valid yet, and you cannot send to your customer. Understand or not? Only valid this invoice will send to your customer. You are allowed to send. This transaction is considered approved transaction. Get the point or not? Now, from here you can see your UID and your UUID. And you can see here, this is your invoice type is e-invoice. If consolidated one, that one will show consolidated. And then consolidated, it will have the consolidated number here. Understand? System will auto-generate the consolidated number for you. It's totally different one. Okay? Any question? Pardon? Very good question. If not valid, then how? Keep on waiting. Okay, how long? Okay, you just wait until it turns to valid. Okay, nobody know how long. Nobody will know. Okay, now previously when I do a seminar, okay, that time it show in progress, submitted, and then I click refresh. I wait, I keep on waiting, wait about 2 to 3 minutes, then only update to valid. But now it seems like very fast, immediately. Okay, valid already, correct? Okay, let us do another transaction, see whether that it can be so fast or not. So now I do another one. This one is S72. Okay, see, I create another one. Same, I use the same item. Okay, everything same. Okay, you see, everything same. I just click like this. Okay, successful. Then we go in to see. This one, 872. See, in progress, submitted. See that? Not immediate. Okay, just now you see valid is because I take quite long time in front there for the explanation. So when I come in here, then you can see the valid already. Okay, but now in progress and submitted, right? It's not valid means that this transaction you cannot send to your customer. Cannot send. You have to wait until valid. So how? You just click this one, refresh and see. Right? Valid already. Now valid already. Yes. Yes, it can be invalid. It can be invalid for certain circumstances. Okay? It can be invalid. So you have to make sure that valid. Always in progress submitted, then please don't do anything. Wait until valid. Okay?
In case of the invalid, can we understand why it happened?
Basically, nobody knows why it happens. Okay. All right. Okay. For the invalid case, okay, you have to cancel it. Cancel it. Okay. Now, for example, now for this one, the valid one, okay, can I delete it? Sales invoice has already been submitted to the e-invoice system and cannot be deleted. Cannot be deleted. Okay. So it means that if I want to delete this one, sorry, cannot. So if I insist I want to delete, how? Okay, I highlight this one. You see, I click this one, or I can click this one. Then I just select this one. Okay. Then here, e-invoice, don't come to here. This is consolidate. This is invoice. You click this one. Do you see the cancel? Okay. Okay. Each time when you do a cancellation, they ask you to input the reason. Okay. So you can just put any reason. You can just, I'm just play only. Okay. For me, I just did testing lah. Okay. Or trial run. I cancel. Yes. Okay. Now you see what is the difference. This one still remain. This one still remain, correct? Hey, just now I cancel this one. Okay. So now you see this one remain, these two, and this one you become cancel. But in front here, this one the status is valid. Okay. But after you cancel, some people might think that I already cancel, means that I cancel this e-invoice no longer as an e-invoice already. Right? So I can reuse this one to do consolidated. Can or not? You can do consolidated. Okay? But I tell you what, you may facing a problem. Because you see the status didn't change. It still keep under e-invoice, type is e-invoice. Okay? If for the consolidated, the e-invoice, it cannot show e-invoice. The invoice type must show consolidated. Understand or not? For this type, for this one, it must show consolidated. It cannot show e-invoice. If you do consolidated, but the type still remain as e-invoice, then got problem. Okay? Now, whose mistake? All this is the real one, the real-time one. Okay? The feedback from who? From IRB. So this is their problem. This is their mistake. Right? It's supposed to be make it unknown. Got another one is unknown. If you put later, just now we got later, right? Okay? If you click later, then this one will become unknown. Okay? This is the feedback first, unknown. Then when you do consolidated, the unknown will change to consolidate. Okay? Later I will do a transaction for you to see. Okay? Just for your understanding. So this one you cancel already. Better don't do the same for other. You can alter, you can edit, update, but submit for e-invoice again. Understand? Now you are using back this number. Can? So now you see, I call out this number, right? This number. I'm using the same number. Okay, so I just change the price. Maybe I make it 20 because I may wrongly put the price before. So I just change and then I click update. Ask you the question, same question. So yes. Okay, successful, right? Let me see, this is the first one, this row. E-invoice, valid. See that? Don't do other things. E-invoice is e-invoice. Even though after you cancel, you update, please do e-invoice. Don't use the e-invoice format, do for consolidated. Okay, this is the error they haven't find out yet. Okay, because I got no time to inform them. Okay, get it? Understand? Okay, now you see, just now, if you want to do the cancellation, you must do it within 72 hours from the validation date and time. Now remember, this is not from your invoice date and time. It's different. You submit, they validate the date and time. Now, for example, today I create invoice, but tomorrow only I submit. Okay, but the invoice is today date, but tomorrow only I submit for invoice. So the invoice validation date is tomorrow date, tomorrow time. Okay, so 72 hours is from the validation, is from the tomorrow date and time. It's not follow the invoice date and time. Okay, this one is for the cancellation and rejection. Rejection means that when you receive invoice from your supplier, you can reject. Later I will show you that part. Okay, now we're talking about the invoice part. Okay, so make sure that this one have to be done within 72 hours from the validation date and time. Okay, it may be tomorrow, it may be the day after tomorrow. Okay, now how are you going to count for 72 hours? Okay, for example, today days, okay, you will count start from tomorrow. Tomorrow consider one, first day. Day after tomorrow, second day. Okay, and the following days is the third day. They not include today dates. Get it? 72 hours is like that. Okay, now, just now we're talking about is the cancellation and the rejection. It will be the same. Now we want to talk about the submission date time. It's also under 72 hours. But how are you going to define this 72 hours? Because before you submit, you don't have the validation date and time, right? So how are you going to follow, to trace? So the only way is your invoice date and time. Now you see, the submission and the cancellation is different things. Submission is follow your invoice date and time. Meaning that when you issue a new invoice, you have to submit within 72 hours according to your invoice date and time. You have to submit within 72 hours according to your invoice date and time. So how to define this 72 hours? For example, today 28, right? The invoice date is 28. So 29, consider first day. 29 is first day. 30, second day. 31 is the third day. Then the first is considered the fourth day. So first, you cannot submit already. You only allowed to submit on 31st. This is the last day. Not include today. Today is 28, right? And not include today. So 29, 30, 31. Okay? If after 31, then you have to readjust your invoice date. From 28, you adjust to 29, and then on the 1st, you can submit. Remember, this 72 days for submission is follow invoice date and time. For the cancellation and rejection is follow the validation date and time. Get it? Huh? The validation date and time is different. Okay, as I said that today, 28, I issue a new invoice. The date is 28. Then I submit on 31. Okay, 31 on the 3rd day. So the validation date is count from the 31 start onwards 72 hours. It's not from the invoice date 72 hours. Get it? It's totally different things. Okay? I can see that you guys are very smart. Everything can understand. OK， 刚才我们讲是12点还是12点半？12点是啊。OK， so now it's time to break 啦。Yeah, so that we can continue better lah. Okay, so I think it's good to good time to break lah. Okay. All right. Thank you. So see you later. We will be back here at 1. Okay. Please be sharp. Okay. Thank you.